meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the MID board on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked to identify themselves and state the subject of their comment. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the president of the board has the option of asking the speaker to hold the comment until the item is called. The board is prohibited by law from taking any actions on matter discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the board does not respond to public comment at this time. We do ask that everyone goes to the board for every public comment, and there is a sheet there for your name, so please sign in. Yeah. I was signing.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Jim. So just a couple of days, just a reminder, we have our annual meeting, our United Harvest Celebration annual meeting on October 27th in Coachella. If anybody would like to attend, I have tickets. We have Ray Appleton and Jimmy J.J. Walker coming, so as I said last time, it should be a dynamite time. And then we have a few other events going on. We have a nitrogen management training, so if you need your hours for your self-certification for your nitrogen management plans, we have a training on that on November 5th, I believe it is. We also have a sexual harassment prevention training, make sure I get that right. It will be a 2-hour training for supervisors, as well as there will be an hour of the 1 hour for the employees, so that is coming into play. We have that coming up November, I think it's November 11th or November 12th. I have all of those dates, but I can give it to you if you'd like. And then we also do have a DPR training that will be coming up as well in November that should have somewhere between 6 to 8 hours for your some credits that you need. Any questions with me or anything that you might need from our bureau?
Thank you. Yeah, you didn't announce who you were.
I'm sorry,
I
Christina
was so-
Beckstead, Madera County Farm Bureau.
Because I rudely interrupted your
That's right.
train of thought. Anybody else? Public comment? Okay.
Okay, we're going to recess as the MID Board of Directors and convene as the MID Groundwater Sustainability Agency. We have A, update on MID GSA. We have GSP comments received, coordination agreement, public outreach, data management system proposals, and B, discussion possible action on the recommendation from the MID Groundwater Committee on the intensive groundwater use policy, resolution number 2019-GSA01.
Yeah, so a few things to update the board on related to the GSA. For the GSP, we received 1 additional comment since the last board meeting that was circulated to the board members and is also included in the packet. Related to the coordination agreement, we had a really productive meeting a few weeks back with all 7 GSAs represented. And so we are continuing to work on the draft of the coordination agreement, but I think we are getting close. So there's just a few more edits that need to be made, I believe, by all the agencies, and that should be coming in front of our board for approval in December. As far as public outreach goes, Andrea's been busy, I shall say, doing a lot of public outreach and distributing the brochures that we put together related to MID, the GSA, and the GSP. So those were done in both English and Spanish, and those have been distributed throughout the MID GSA and throughout Madera. Essentially, she's distributed some at Laguna, over in Parksdale, out by Rancho San Miguel, the Madera County Library and such, to really try to get the word out and exposure about what's going on with the GSP and particularly the MID GSA related to that. And then some outreach events coming up on October 22nd. There's a Madera County Coalition, and I didn't get the full title, but
Coalition for Justice.
Coalition for Justice, that we will have a table at and also be distributing information, again, both in English and Spanish versions. On that same day, October 22nd, there is a coordination committee listening session for the GSP. And so that's available to the public to attend also, and the public can also provide comments at that time. Then on November 2nd, we are going to be having a booth at the Pomegranate Festival, again, to try and get the word out and do outreach related to the GSP there. And then finally, on December 2nd, there's gonna be another coordination committee meeting to consider all of the comments that were received on the GSP. Again, all of these are open to the public, and then people can come get information if they would like. Anything else on outreach? Okay.
Oh, Carl, did you want to talk about?
Oh, yes, and then Carl.
Since you've been, this last meeting?
Since the last meeting, I was at a self-help meeting up in and I handed out 14, all the Spanish ones I had, a couple English. I was a little short on Spanish that night. Wasn't completely prepared for that many people. Because that was part of the DAC part of the Regional Water Management Group, but we're talking about water there, and so it was a good time to hand it out, and I talked a little bit about signing to that group, as I did at the Hartsdale group this last month.
Thank you, Carl.
And there's maybe a meeting at Fairmead coming up this month, but I haven't been notified.
We'll see if we can coordinate on that one.
Any questions for Anna?
What was
Okay.
oh, sorry.
Get your exercise. What was the, name of that first, on the 22nd?
It's the Madera County Coalition for Justice. It's their health and resource fair, and that will be at the Trinity Lutheran Church that's on Lake Street, I believe. Yes, it's there. It's a health and resource fair from 9 to 12.
Do you have a flyer on that we can?
I do, and I was supposed to put that earlier, and then I got very busy, but I'll print
Can
it.
you email it to me?
No problem. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
Okay, so, moving on, the data management system proposal, so an RFP was put out, by the county graciously a few weeks ago on the data management system. That is for the entire subbasin related to the GSP work. They got back 4 proposals, and it was narrowed down to 2. And so they're gonna be doing interviews on October 30th, and they're trying to get the same consultant to do both the Madera subbasin and the Chachua subbasin, so there's some economies of scale there. So, so that is also going on related to GSP work.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah, I know.
October 30th.
This proposal on the data system, that's being covered by the state grant.
No.
So who is covering that?
That will be, that will have to come from the agencies. Unless we figure out some other method, but right now, the agencies will fund it.
Okay.
It's a requirement of city.
And you don't have any idea yet what kind of cost to talk about?
And it really varies between the proposals. And it's also how it's gonna be structured between the 7 GSAs. It's not gonna blow our budget for 2020, we don't believe.
Okay, I just wondered.
Okay, we'll see that. Alright, moving on to B, discussion and possible action on the recommendation from the MID Groundwater Committee on the intensive groundwater use policy. And so, if the board recalls, a few months ago at one of the board meetings, we brought this up. If the board would like us to pursue this, we've also had 2 committee meetings related to this that were open to the public. The committees had really good discussion on it, and at the last committee meeting, there was a draft proposed to the committee, and I believe the committee has a recommendation, and that was the draft that was included in your board packet. And Brian, I believe you're the only committee member here at the moment, because Dave Washi was also on the committee, but is not here today.
Yeah. So, this resolution was to limit the groundwater extraction for high-intensity users. I think it was brought up in the past, and I think what the staff had come up with, it was original. I think is what we talked about. It's not something that we mirrored from anybody else, or anybody else doing something like this, but it's something that we felt, represents what we think is fair when allowing high water users to enter into the district and use groundwater from roads. So we agreed the way it's been written. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it yet, but the way it's been written, I think Dave and I both agree that it's worthy of passing.
So with that recommendation, it's been placed on the agenda, it's been, included in your packet, and just to go through at a very high level what the policy is, and again, all the details, I think it's pretty explanatory in the policy, but we'll go through that, somewhat quickly. So it's applicable to those who intend to use groundwater for a purpose other than agriculture as defined as the growing of crops. So again, would not apply to anybody who is in the business of growing crops within the MIDGSA. And again, this is limited to the MIDGSA, not Madera Irrigation District as a whole. Okay? Because if you remember, Madera Water District and the City of Madera are not included in the MIDGSA. The permit would be required, and essentially it's two different scenarios. One is a new or expanded groundwater use as of the date of adoption of this policy, not including the growing of crops and groundwater demands greater than historic demands in the MIDGSA, or any other use of groundwater that in the absence of an appropriate permit, terms and conditions would, in the opinion of the MIDGSA, have the potential for unreasonably interfering with the MIDGSA's ability to comply with SGMA. And so those are essentially the two scenarios where a permit could be required. There will be an application process. The application process is described in the policy and what's required of that, and we do have a draft permit application already drafted here. Then the board of directors or their designee can issue the intensive groundwater use permit. There can be terms and conditions applied by the board or the designee related to the permit. The permit essentially has to remain in compliance during the entire time span when there is an intensive groundwater use within the MIDGSA, and it can be revoked by the district, by the MIDGSA if the terms and conditions aren't being met. Again, it has to remain in effect during the entire term of the intensive groundwater use. Failure to obtain the intensive groundwater use will be subject to the requirements of, shall be subject to a penalty in accordance with Water Code 10732, and so Water Code 10732 actually provides for different penalties within not complying with the intensive groundwater use. And then finally, the remedies, nothing shall bar legal, equitable, or summary remedy to which the MIDGSA may otherwise be entitled. So we may file a suit in any court or competent jurisdiction to restrain or enjoin any action or proposal in violation of this policy. And again, this policy was developed obviously very closely with our legal counsel and was discussed now multiple times with board members, either at committee meetings or at the board meeting.
Questions?
The only thing, what I wrote down here on my notes was, it keeps reading more about some hydroponic operations that they're growing a crop, but yet it's pretty like a manufacturing plant. How would it, where does it fit in?
Most of hydroponics and all that is recycled and filled with.
You know, and I don't know how much water they use in essence in the end, you know.
Yeah, so that may ultimately fall into the second category, which is another use of groundwater that has the potential to unreasonably interfere with the MIDGSA's ability to comply with SGMA. But ultimately it would depend on what what was being anticipated. And so that would be more kind of case by case basis, depending on ultimately what the groundwater.
You know, I sort of thought maybe so, but that was one of the things that came to my mind as I was reading this, because you keep reading more about that.
Anything else? Other questions? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution. Yeah, 2019-GSA 01.
Second.
First and second. Questions from the board? Questions from the public? All the board, please.
Yes. Director LaPasha absent. Director Cousins?
Yes.
Director Davis?
Yes.
Director Jansen?
Yes.
Director Erickson?
Yes.
And with the approval of this, we will actually work with Madera County, both the Water and Natural Resources Department and the Planning Department to make sure they're aware of this policy and that it's in effect.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna adjourn as the MID GSA and reconvene as the MID Board of Directors. For item 2, consent agenda, to A, approval of the September 10th, 2019 board meeting minutes. To B, discussion possible action on the approval of the warrant list payments through October 15th, 2019. And 2C, discussion possible action on the monthly financial report for August. I do have a correction to the minutes. On 5A, the motion was made by Director Luquashi, not Director Jansen. Thank you, Carl, that was a good catch.
Move for approval of the consent items 2A, 2B, and 2C with the correction.
Second. First and second. Questions from the board? Questions from the public? Poll the board, please. Oh, sorry, no, no, no. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Okay, information items, item 3A, the Finance and Human Resources Report, we have Finance on first.
Thank you. Approximately 8,300 acre feet was delivered to original district lands, 3,700 acre feet to subordinate lands, and 1,100 acre feet of operational management water delivered in September for the total water sales of approximately 1.6 million. I got that wrong there. 2020 budget process, sorry about that. 2020 budget process has begun. The budget documents were sent to all department heads on October 1st. The department budgets are requested to be returned to finance no later than Monday, November 4th. And the department head meeting with the GM and assistant GM is scheduled for Friday, November 15th. And the special board budget workshop meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 12th. Our contract with Sampson and Patterson CPAs for our annual financial statement and 401k audits has ended. The finance department is working on putting together a request for proposal that will be mailed out to multiple CPA firms by the end of October.
How many do you think are gonna send up?
Probably at least 5 or 6. I go over that was done last year on one.